you just heard, it has been a dizzying 24 hours in the world of politics. For analysis of it all, we turn to Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics. Tom, great to have you back on. First off, are you surprised at all by Santos's expulsion and the bipartisan agreement on the issue?
I think most people were surprised that so many Republicans voted to oust him. No surprise that all the Democrats did, except for two. But the Republican caucus was pretty evenly split. You had 105 vote to expel him. You had, I think, 112 vote to try and keep him in his seat. So that really showed. I mean, there were real divisions over whether he deserved to be expelled. He hadn't been convicted of a crime. Only 5 House members had been expelled before that. 3 of them were in the Civil War era. One of them in the 1980s was convicted of bribery. Jim Traficant was convicted of tax fraud and racketeering. So in that sense, Santos had a decent argument that he shouldn't be expelled, and that this was going sort of another step in his mind and his supporters' minds, a step too far. But at the end of the day, this House Ethics Committee saying that there was substantial evidence that he had committed these fraudulent acts, I think was the tipping point, and you saw Republicans, vote to kick him out.
Yeah, Tom, what does this mean, though, for the Republican caucus in the House and their already slim majority?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's already very slim, so having one less person makes it a little bit more difficult, but not much. I mean, this is New York's 3rd congressional district, which he represented, is on Long Island. This district is a district that Joe Biden won by 10 points in 2020. Santos won it by 8. And it was represented formerly by Tom Suozzi, and he's already said that he's going to run again for this seat in 2024. As your reporter mentioned, Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, has 10 days to set a date. That date is supposed to be between no less than 70 days, no more than 80 days from when she makes her proclamation. So as early as, let's say, March or April, Democrats could have a new member in their caucus in the House of Representatives. Does it fundamentally change the dynamic? No, it was already hard, but it might be just a little bit harder on some of these votes where you're, arm twisting to get a single extra vote. I mean, it's certainly Mike Johnson's job as Speaker is already hard enough.
Yeah, I want to switch gears now. I want to talk about that debate last night between DeSantis and Newsom on Fox. A lot of jabs and insults were exchanged between the two governors. That said, what was the real purpose of this debate? One is running to be the GOP candidate and the other isn't running at all, presumably.
Yeah, presumably. I mean, he said last night, Gavin Newsom, that he was not running a shadow campaign, that he's not in for 2024. And that may be true. I mean, we'll find out. But he certainly is running in 2028, regardless of what happens. And so, look, for Ron DeSantis, whose campaign has been struggling, this was a chance for him to sort of showcase his state, his leadership in his state. His approval ratings when he was in Florida was always very high. And so he was able to sort of make the case in a high-profile way against a Democrat, against blue state policies. So I think for DeSantis's folks, their calculus was, look, they really at this point have nothing to lose. They've got, a very limited time to turn things around, and for them to put their candidate on display. And I think from the reaction that I saw among folks on the right, they feel like he acquitted himself pretty well and was in command of the facts and did a good job against a candidate on the other side, a debater on the other side, and Gavin Newsom, who is, he's slick, he's telegenic, he's charismatic, he's eloquent. I think a lot of people expected him to run away with it, and that certainly wasn't the case. As you mentioned, there was a lot of bickering, a lot of insults. But at the end of the day, I think the DeSantis folks just said, listen, we have to do something to change the dynamic. And if we can get more Republican voters to tune in and see our guy in a favorable light, that can only help us moving forward.
Yeah, one thing they do have in common is both of them are Catholic, although very, very different views when it comes to abortion, as we saw in that debate. Speaking of debates, the next Republican presidential debate is scheduled for next week, December 6th. Tom, what do you think we can expect from that?
Well, I'm actually going to be there, and I want to see this up close. I mean, we're getting down to it now. We're going to have, I think, 3 candidates. I'm not sure Chris Christie is going to qualify, so you're effectively down to DeSantis, Haley, and Ramaswamy. And so There's going to be a lot of time. You know, Megyn Kelly is one of the debate moderators, and she's a very popular figure. So I think it's going to be an interesting debate. It is a question of can anybody at this late stage say anything that's going to change any minds? Obviously, Haley's been rising, so I'm going to look to see whether she can continue her rise, and I would expect that she takes the full force from both sides. She and Ramaswamy already don't like each other. They get into it on the debate stage all the time. But I expect DeSantis really to focus on her in a way that he hasn't in previous debates, because he simply can't accept having her slide into second place in Iowa in particular. He has to really, keep whatever momentum he can find in the next few weeks to get to a point where he's back in second place, and a close second at that. I don't think a distant second place finish for either one of those candidates is going to derail Donald Trump, given where he stands in the rest of the states with his poll lead.
All right, Tom, thank you so much. We'll be tuning in to see what happens. Always appreciate your insights.
Thanks, Teresa.